5 nights after my highway accident, I lay alone in my hospital room, still recovering from my injuries. Earlier that evening, my daughter had visited me, held my hand and promised everything would be okay before leaving. But at 11:47 p.m., the door slowly opened. A police officer stepped inside, locked it, and covered my mouth. I froze staring into his eyes, until he whispered a name that made my entire world collapse. Before we go further, if this opening already hit you somewhere, deep hit that like button and tell me in the comments where in the world are you watching from. I read every single one. This is Revenge Dad, and you found us at the right time. Some elements of this story are fictional, created for storytelling purposes. Names and settings are coincidental, but what Walter learned, you can take with you. The box was not heavy. That was the first thing I noticed when I picked it up from the passenger seat of Ethan's truck that morning. 35 years of work and the evidence that would end everything fit inside a cardboard box I could lift with one hand. I carried it through the front entrance of Hayes Freight Solutions and took the elevator to the second floor. My ribs still ached when I breathed too deeply, a reminder of what had put me in Cedars-Sinai for the better part of 3 months. The doctor had warned me about pushing too hard too soon. I told him I appreciated his concern. Then I asked Ethan to bring me my suit. The conference room door was closed when I reached it. Through the narrow window beside the frame, I could see Audrey standing at the head of the table, a presentation slide glowing blue behind her. She was wearing the gray blazer I had bought her for her 30th birthday. Her posture was straight, her voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that had always made me proud. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room went still. Audrey's hand, which had been gesturing toward the screen, dropped to her side. The color left her face the way water drains from a glass, completely and all at once. Her lips parted, and for a moment, no sound came out. "Dad?" she finally said, and her voice cracked on that single word like old wood giving way. "You should be resting." I walked to the center of the table and set the box down. The sound it made was soft, almost gentle. Nothing about what came next would be. "I've been resting long enough," I said, "but I am getting ahead of myself. To understand what was in the box and why it mattered, you need to go back to a Friday morning in September, when everything I had spent my life building nearly came apart on a stretch of the 10 freeway. I started Hayes Freight Solutions in 1987 with a single truck, a used Peterbilt 389 navy blue, with a crack in the passenger side mirror that I never got around to fixing. I was 31 years old, had $400 in my checking account, and a wife named Margaret who believed in me with a certainty I had never quite managed to feel about myself. "You know how to drive," she told me the morning I signed the paperwork on that truck. "And you know how to work. The rest you'll figure out." She was right. It took 15 years and more early mornings than I can count, but Hayes Freight grew from 1 truck to 20, then from 20 to 100, then to the 230 vehicles that rolled out of our commerce yard every week by the time Audrey joined the company after business school. We ran freight across California, Arizona, Nevada, and all the way to New York. We had contracts with manufacturers, distributors, medical suppliers, and a dozen regional grocery chains. We had a reputation for showing up on time and delivering what we promised. Margaret did not live to see most of it. She passed away in the spring of 2003 when Audrey was 11 years old. Ovarian cancer. The doctors gave her 8 months, and she lasted 14 because that was who she was. Stubborn in the best possible way, determined to stay as long as she could. The morning after her funeral, I sat at the kitchen table with Audrey across from me. She was still wearing her black dress. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she kept folding and unfolding a paper napkin in her hands like she needed something to hold on to. "Are we going to be okay?" she asked me. My throat tightened so hard I had to look away before I could answer. I stared at the window above the sink at the pale California morning coming through the glass, and I told myself I was not going to fall apart in front of my daughter. "Yes," I said. "We're going to be okay." I kept that promise. For 22 years, I kept it in every way I knew how. The morning of the accident was ordinary in all the ways that matter. I had an 8 o'clock meeting at the yard in Commerce, and I was running 10 minutes behind, which was unusual for me. I merged onto the 10 heading east just after 7:40, the city still slow and gray in the early September light. I never saw the truck coming. It hit the rear driver's side of my truck with enough force to send me across 2 lanes. I remember the sound, a deep percussive impact that seemed to come from everywhere at once, and then the sensation of the world rotating in ways it was not supposed to. When I came to a stop against the concrete divider, my chest felt like something inside it had been rearranged. 3 ribs, I would learn later, and a head injury the doctors described as mild, though nothing about the headaches that followed felt mild to me. The truck that hit me was gone by the time the first patrol car arrived. The driver had left the scene without stopping, without calling for help, without leaving anything behind except skid marks and a piece of shattered tail light on the asphalt. The paramedics loaded me into an ambulance while I was still trying to understand what had happened. I kept asking about my truck. One of them, a young man with a patient face, told me my truck was fine. I told him he clearly did not understand how much the truck had cost me. He smiled at that. I think he thought I was confused from the impact. I was not confused. I was just a man who had spent 35 years making sure everything he owned was paid for and cared for. And old habits are hard to break, even when your ribs are cracked and the world is tilting sideways. At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, they put me in room 412 on the 4th floor, gave me something for the pain and told me to rest. The attending physician, a careful man named Dr. Harmon, explained that the rib fractures would heal on their own, but that I needed to avoid exertion. He also told me that the scan showed minor inflammation near the site of the head impact and that I would need to be monitored for the next several days. "Any family we should call?" the nurse asked while she adjusted the IV line in my arm. "My daughter," I said. "Audrey Hayes, her number is in my phone." What I did not know then, what I had no reason to suspect, was that by the time Audrey arrived at my bedside, someone else had already been there first. He was sitting in the chair beside my bed when I opened my eyes the next morning. Not Audrey, not a nurse, not Dr. Harmon with his careful voice and his clipboard full of scan results. Victor Langford. He was dressed the way he always dressed: dark slacks, a collared shirt with the top button, open a jacket that probably cost more than my first truck payment. His silver hair was combed back from his forehead, and he was holding a paper cup of coffee from the hospital cafeteria like a man who had nowhere more important to be. When he saw my eyes open, he smiled. It was a warm smile, patient, practiced. "Walter," he said, "you gave everyone quite a scare." My chest tightened, and not from the broken ribs. I pushed myself up against the pillow, slowly, because moving too fast sent pain shooting through my left side like a current of electricity. I looked at the man sitting 3 feet away from me and tried to remember the last time I had given him my phone number. I could not, because I never had. "Victor," I said, "how did you know which room I was in?" He lifted one hand in a small, easy gesture. "I still have a few friends in this building, old colleagues from my time with the State Transportation Office. Word travels." He leaned forward and placed the coffee cup on the tray table beside my bed. "I brought you something. The cafeteria downstairs is better than you'd expect." I did not touch the coffee. "That's thoughtful of you," I said. "I wanted to come by personally." He settled back in the chair, crossing one leg over the other. "You've built something remarkable, Walter. Hayes Freight is an institution in this city. When I heard about the accident, I thought the least I can do is check in." I studied his face while he talked. Victor Langford had always been good at this. The warm tone, the reasonable words, the way he made a conversation feel like a favor he was doing you. I had seen it 6 years ago across a conference table in my own building when he had come in with a purchase offer and a smile just like this one. "I appreciate you coming," I said carefully, "but I don't want you to go out of your way. It's no trouble at all." He held my gaze for a moment, then looked around the room at the IV line, the monitoring equipment, the window facing west. His eyes moved the way a man's eyes move when he is looking for something specific. "Audrey must be worried sick. She'll be here this afternoon." "Of course," he nodded slowly. "She's a capable young woman. You raised her well." He stood then, unhurried, straightening his jacket with both hands. "If there's anything you need, anything at all, I want you to call me. The offer stands, Walter. It always has." He meant the other offer, the one I had turned down in 2017. He did not say it directly, but I heard it underneath every word, the way you hear a truck engine idling 2 blocks away on a quiet street. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. After he left, I lay there staring at the ceiling for a long time. My ribs ached, my head throbbed at the base of my skull where the impact had done its damage. But what I kept coming back to, what I could not stop turning over in my mind, was one simple question. How had Victor Langford known which room I was in before my own daughter had been called? Audrey arrived at 2:30 in the afternoon, and the moment she walked through the door, my chest ached in a way that had nothing to do with broken bones. She was still in her work clothes, a navy blazer over a white blouse, her dark hair pulled back. But her eyes were red at the edges, and her mascara had smudged slightly beneath her left eye, the way it does when you have been crying, and tried to clean it up without a mirror. She crossed the room in 4 quick steps and bent down to press her cheek against mine, careful not to put any weight on my chest. "Dad," her voice broke on the word. She pulled back and cupped my face in both her hands, her eyes scanning me, like she was taking inventory of every part of me that still worked. I came as fast as I could. The traffic on the 405 was... Her voice cracked again, and she pressed her lips together hard, fighting to hold herself together. "I should have been here this morning. I'm so sorry." "Hey!" I reached up and put my hand over hers. Her fingers were trembling. "I'm all right. I'm right here. You have 3 broken ribs, Dad. I've had worse. You have not had worse." She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pressed the back of her hand against her mouth for a moment. Then she pulled the visitor's chair close to the bed and sat down leaning forward with her elbows on her knees. "Tell me exactly what the doctors said. Everything." I told her. Dr. Harmon's assessment, the scan results, the timeline for the ribs to heal, the monitoring protocol for the head injury. Audrey listened to every word with the focused attention she had always brought to things that mattered to her, asking 2 or 3 precise questions at the right moments. When I finished, she exhaled slowly and rubbed the back of her neck. "What about the driver?" she asked. "The one who hit you?" "Left the scene. The police are looking into it." Her jaw tightened for just a fraction of a second, so brief I might have missed it if I had not been watching her, the way fathers watch their children, constantly, instinctively reading every small signal the way you read weather. "I'll make some calls," she said. "See if I can get someone to follow up on it." "You don't need to do that." "I want to." She reached over and squeezed my hand, and her grip was firm and warm. "I'm going to take care of things while you rest, the company, the contracts, anything that needs handling. You don't need to worry about any of it." "Audrey." "Dad." She met my eyes, and hers were steady now, the tears held back by something that looked like determination. "Let me do this, please. You've taken care of everything my whole life. Let me take care of things for once." I looked at my daughter, at this woman I had raised from an 11-year-old girl sitting at a kitchen table in a black dress, folding a napkin with both hands because she needed something to hold on to, and I felt something loosen in my chest that had nothing to do with broken bones. "All right," I said. "We can talk about it." She squeezed my hand once more. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a document organizer I recognized from my own desk. She had brought paperwork. She had come prepared. Looking back now, I understand what I missed in that moment. I was too busy being grateful to notice that she had not asked me what I needed. She had told me what she was going to do. Later that evening, after Audrey had gone home and the floor had settled into its nighttime quiet, I lay in the dark and thought about Victor Langford in the chair beside my bed that morning, about the way his eyes had moved around the room, about the warm smile and the paper cup of coffee I had never touched, about the fact that he had been there before my own daughter. I thought about all of it for a long time. Then I reached over, opened the drawer of the nightstand beside the bed, and checked that my phone was still where I had left it. It was, and so was everything else I had been careful to keep close. On the 5th night, I could not sleep. That was not unusual. The pain medication they had me on kept the sharpest edges off the rib fractures, but it also left me in a strange half-waking state where my thoughts moved too slowly to follow and too quickly to dismiss. I lay in the dark of room 412 and listened to the sounds of the hospital settling around me, the distant roll of a cart in the hallway, the low hum of the ventilation system, the occasional murmur of voices at the nurse's station down the corridor. It was 11:47 by the clock on the wall when I heard the door. Not a knock, not the practiced push of a nurse coming in to check vitals. This was slower, deliberate. The handle turned with the careful precision of someone who did not want to make noise, and the door swung inward on its hinges without a sound. I kept my eyes nearly closed, just a sliver, enough to see. The man who stepped into the room was broad-shouldered and moved with the flat-footed confidence of someone used to walking into spaces uninvited. He was wearing a uniform dark blue LAPD patch on the left shoulder, and he paused just inside the doorway, long enough for his eyes to adjust to the low light from the monitoring equipment. Then he turned and locked the door behind him. My heart slammed against the inside of my chest so hard, I was certain the monitor beside the bed would spike and trigger an alarm. I forced myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way Dr. Harmon had shown me, to manage the pain without tensing my damaged ribs. The man crossed the room in 8 steps and leaned over the bed. His hand came down over my mouth before I could draw a full breath. The pressure was firm and deliberate enough to hold, not enough to injure. His face was close to mine, close enough that I could see the lines around his eyes, and the careful blankness he was wearing, like a second uniform. "Don't make a sound," he said. His voice was just above a whisper, controlled and even. "I'm not here to hurt you, Mr. Hayes. I need you to listen to me." I grabbed his wrist with both hands, not to fight him off, because I already understood that my 3 cracked ribs and 2 days of hospital food were not going to win that contest, but because it was what a frightened man would do. And I needed him to believe I was frightened. I was not frightened. I was watching. "My name is Daniel Cross," he said. "I'm with LAPD Commercial Transport Division, and I need you to understand something before it's too late." He glanced toward the door, then back to me. "Your daughter is not managing your company, Mr. Hayes. She is dismantling it." He lifted his hand from my mouth, slowly watching my face. I let my expression do the work, eyes wide, jaw loose, the particular blankness of a man whose world has just been knocked sideways. I had spent 35 years reading people across negotiating tables and loading docs in courtrooms. I knew what shock looked like. I gave him all of it. "What are you talking about?" I said, and I let my voice shake just enough. "Audrey Hayes has been redirecting freight contracts to outside operators connected to a private investment group." He straightened up and his eyes moved, and there it was, the tell I had been waiting for. His gaze swept the room, the way a man's gaze sweeps a room when he is looking for something specific. The nightstand, the closet, the tray table. "She's been doing it since the day you were admitted. By the time you're discharged, the company's most valuable shipping lanes will belong to someone else." "That can't be right," I said. "Audrey wouldn't. She already has." His eyes went to the drawer of the nightstand, stayed there for just a half second too long. "Is there anything in this room that belongs to the company, documents, a laptop, a storage device of any kind?" And there it was. He had not come here to warn me. He had come here to find something. The warning was the wrapping paper useful, convincing, just alarming enough to keep my hands busy and my attention focused on his face while he cataloged every surface in the room. I let my hands drop from his wrist. I pressed them flat against the mattress and let my shoulders sag, the posture of a man deflating under bad news. "I don't keep work things here," I said. "My daughter brought some paperwork yesterday, but she took it home with her." Something shifted behind his eyes. Not disappointment exactly, more like recalculation. He moved to the nightstand and pulled open the drawer, with a smooth, unhurried motion, the way a man moves when he has done this before and expects to find what he came for. He found my reading glasses, a paperback novel, 2 packs of crackers the nurse had left for me, and my phone. He picked up the phone, checked the screen, set it back down. Then he moved to the small closet beside the bathroom door and opened it. My street clothes hung on the single rod inside the shirt and jeans I had been wearing when the ambulance brought me in. He checked the pockets of the jacket. He checked the shelf above. He crouched down and looked at the floor of the closet. Nothing. He stood up and turned back to face me. Whatever he had expected to find in room 412 was not here, and he was good enough at his job to know that pressing harder would cost him more than it gained. "I'm going to give you a number," he said, pulling a card from his breast pocket and setting it on the tray table. "If you find anything, documents, records, anything that seems out of place, you call me directly, not the main line, this number." He tapped the card once with 2 fingers. "Do you understand?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. My hands were flat on the mattress. "I understand." He held my gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he walked to the door, unlocked it, and stepped out into the hallway without another word. I waited until I heard his footsteps fade. Then I exhaled a long, careful breath that sent a current of pain through my left side and stared at the ceiling of room 412. Officer Daniel Cross of the LAPD Commercial Transport Division had just broken into a hospital room, warned me about my daughter, and searched every surface he could reach without making it obvious that searching was what he had come to do. He had checked the nightstand, the closet, my jacket pockets, and my phone. He had not checked the one place that mattered. 3 days before the accident on the 10 freeway, I had noticed something wrong in the routing data for our September freight schedule. I did not know then what I was looking at, but I had learned a long time ago that when something in your own company does not add up, you do not wait to find out why. You copy the data, you put it somewhere safe, and you figure out the rest later. I had copied everything onto a small drive, and I had given that drive to Marcus Reed, my chief accountant of 22 years, the morning before the accident, with instructions to keep it somewhere only he knew about. Cross had searched every inch of this hospital room and come away empty-handed, which told me two things. First, that whoever had sent him did not know about Marcus, and second, that I had approximately 1 day before they started looking harder. I reached over and picked up the business card from the tray table. I turned it over once in my fingers. Then I set it face down on the nightstand, picked up my phone, and opened my contacts. I did not call the number on the card. I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. I kept my voice low and my words short. "The drive is safe," I said. "Don't move it. Don't tell anyone. And Marcus, starting tomorrow, I need you to watch everything." She brought coffee. That was the first thing I noticed when Audrey walked in the next morning, the paper cup from the place on the corner of Wilshire and Robertson, the one with the green awning that I had been stopping at every morning for the better part of 20 years. Dark roast, no sugar, a splash of whole milk. She had remembered. Of course she had remembered. She had grown up watching me drink it. I figured the hospital stuff was terrible. She said, setting the cup on the tray table and bending down to kiss my forehead. Her hair smelled like the same shampoo she had used since college, something with lavender in it that Margaret had liked, and that Audrey had kept using long after her mother was gone. "How did you sleep?" "Well enough," I said. That was not entirely true. I had lain awake for most of the night after my call with Marcus, turning things over in my mind the way you turn a stone over with your boot to see what is living underneath. But Audrey did not need to know that, not yet. Not until I understood more clearly what I was looking at. She pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down, wrapping both hands around her own cup. In the morning light coming through the window, I could see the faint shadows under her eyes that told me she had not slept much either. She was trying to hide them with makeup, and she had done a reasonable job. But I had been reading my daughter's face for 39 years. I knew the difference. "I spoke with Tom Gilroy this morning," she said. Tom was our operations manager, a solid, careful man who had been with the company for 11 years. He's going to handle the Pacific Southwest contracts while you're recovering. I've also rescheduled the November carrier review. We can push it to January without losing anything." "That's good thinking," I said. She nodded, looking down at her coffee. And then, in a tone so casual it almost slipped past me, she said, "I've also been talking to some of the regional partners about restructuring a few of the smaller shipping lanes. Just streamlining, nothing major." I wrapped both hands around the warm paper cup she had brought me and looked at my daughter's face. She was looking at the window. Her expression was open, relaxed, the face of a woman describing routine business. Nothing in her voice or her posture suggested that what she had just said was anything other than exactly what it sounded like. But I had built Hayes Freight from the ground up. I knew every lane we ran, every contract we held, and every partner we worked with. And I knew that the regional shipping lanes Audrey was referring to were not small. They were the backbone of our California to New York corridor, the contracts that kept 230 trucks moving and 340 employees paid. "Which lanes?" I asked. She looked back at me and smiled. "Just the secondary connectors. I'll put together a summary for you to review when you're feeling better." I nodded and let it go, because that was what a tired, injured man who trusted his daughter completely would do. I have thought a great deal in the months since about the particular kind of blindness that love produces. Not the foolish kind, not the blindness of a man who ignores obvious signs because he does not want to see them. The other kind. The kind that comes from having watched someone grow from a frightened 11-year-old girl into a capable, sharp-minded woman, and believing with everything you have that the person you raised is still fundamentally the person you know. Margaret used to say that the most dangerous thing about love was how reasonable it made unreasonable faith feel. She said it about her own mother, who had stayed in a difficult marriage for 40 years because she could not stop believing the man she had married at 22 was still in there somewhere. But I have come to think she was talking about all of us, about the particular mathematics of love, where the history of a relationship becomes a kind of evidence proof that the person you are looking at is who you believe them to be. I had 39 years of evidence when it came to Audrey. I remembered the morning she was born, the way the doctor placed her in my arms, and I looked down at this small, red-faced, furiously unhappy person and felt something open up in my chest that I had not known was closed. I remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle in the parking lot of our church on a Sunday morning, running alongside her with one hand on the back of the seat, and then letting go, watching her wobble and correct and wobble again, and somehow impossibly stay upright. I remembered the year after Margaret died, when Audrey was 12 and had decided that she was not going to cry anymore because crying did not help and she had things to do. She had started making lists, grocery lists, homework lists, lists of things that needed fixing around the house. She would leave them on the kitchen table for me to find in the morning, written in her careful 12-year-old handwriting, and I would read them and feel my heart break and mend itself in the same moment. She had been trying to take care of me. Even then, even at 12 years old, with her mother 6 months in the ground, she had been trying to make sure I was all right. How do you weigh that against a set of suspicious numbers and a freight schedule? How do you hold those two things in your mind at the same time and decide which one is real? She stayed for 2 hours that morning, and we talked about ordinary things, the company, the neighborhood near my house where construction had started on a new development, a movie she had seen with a friend the week before the accident. She was warm and easy and funny in the way she had always been, funny with a dry delivery, and a talent for finding the absurd detail in an otherwise unremarkable story. When she stood to leave, she squeezed my hand and told me she would be back the next evening. She had meetings in the afternoon that she could not move, but she would come straight from the office. "Don't let them talk you into the meatloaf," she said, nodding toward the hallway where a food cart was making its rounds. "I had it last time I visited someone here. It should be classified as a controlled substance." I laughed. It hurt my ribs. I did not care. After she was gone, I sat with the empty coffee cup in my hands and let myself feel the full weight of what I was carrying. The call with Marcus the night before, Cross in his careful hands going through every surface in this room, Victor Langford and his patient smile, and the way he had said the offer stands Walter as though 6 years had not passed and nothing had changed. My throat tightened until I had to press my lips together hard and look out the window at the pale Los Angeles sky. I had promised Margaret the morning after her funeral that I would always be Audrey's safe place. 22 years later, I was lying in a hospital bed trying to figure out whether my daughter had arranged the accident that put me here. The pain in my ribs was nothing compared to that. I was still sitting there, turning the empty cup in my hands when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up and looked at the screen. Marcus Reed, calling from his office line, which he only used when he did not want the call logged on his personal record. I answered before the second ring finished. "Walter." His voice was low and tight in a way I had not heard from him in 22 years. Not since the morning his wife got her diagnosis and he had called me from the hospital parking lot, not knowing what else to do. "I need you to listen carefully. Something is wrong with the September numbers. Not wrong like a data entry error. Wrong like someone went in and changed them after the fact." My hand tightened around the phone until I could feel the edges of the case pressing into my palm. "How many entries?" I asked. 14 routing changes, all of them in the last 10 days. And Walter. He paused and I heard him exhale slowly, like a man setting down something very heavy. The authorization codes on every single one of them belonged to Audrey. I set the phone down on the nightstand and stared at it for a long moment. 14 routing changes, all of them carrying Audrey's authorization codes, all of them made in the 10 days since I had been admitted to room 412. I knew what I had to do. The question was how to do it without letting anyone know I had started. I picked the phone back up and scrolled to a number I had not called in almost 2 years. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered, rough at the edges, the way voices get when a man has spent 20 years driving through early mornings and late nights, and does not quite shake the habit even after he retires. "Walter Hayes," Ethan Cole said. "You're either calling to apologize for that terrible hand of poker you played in Bakersfield in '97, or something's wrong." Despite everything, I felt the corner of my mouth pull upward. "Something's wrong, Ethan?" "Figured." I heard him settle back in a chair, the specific creak of the old wooden rocker he kept on his porch in Sacramento. "Talk to me." I kept it short. That was always the way with Ethan. He did not need the full picture painted for him, only the essential lines. I told him about the accident, about the hospital, about the 14 routing changes Marcus had found. I did not tell him about Cross, not yet. Some information you hold back until you know who is listening. "I need you to pull the freight records for September," I said. "Quietly, everything coming in and out of the commerce yard. Cross-reference it against the actual delivery confirmations and tell me where the numbers stop matching." Ethan was quiet for a beat. Not the silence of a man who needed time to think, but the silence of a man who had already thought and was choosing his words carefully. "You know what you're describing." "I know." "And you know who you're describing it about." My chest tightened. My ribs ached. "I know that too," I said. "That's why I'm calling you and not anyone else." "All right." His voice was steady, and certain the same voice that had talked me through a blown transmission on a 2-lane highway in the Nevada desert 30 years ago. "Give me 48 hours. After I ended the call, I lay back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling. The morning light had shifted, moving across the floor in the slow way hospital. Light moves when you have nothing to do but watch it. Audrey was coming back that afternoon. I had approximately 4 hours to become a different version of myself, the version she needed to believe in. A man who was tired and sore and grateful for his daughter's help. A man who did not understand why the September numbers looked different, or who had changed them, or what it meant. A man who was content to rest and let someone else handle the details. I had built a company from nothing by paying attention to details. Now I needed to convince my daughter that I had forgotten how. When Audrey arrived at 3 o'clock, I was sitting up in bed with a crossword puzzle I had not made any progress on, and a half-eaten cup of pudding on the tray table beside me. I had asked the nurse to bring me the pudding specifically because it was the kind of thing a man asks for when he is not thinking clearly about nutrition or dignity. "Dad." Audrey set her bag down and came to the bed, pressing her hand against my forehead, the way she used to check me for fever when I was sick and she was 12 and trying to take care of everything. "You look tired." "I am tired," I said, which was true. "These medications make it hard to think straight," which was less true but close enough. She pulled the chair close and opened her laptop. "I wanted to walk you through a few things, just so you're in the loop." She turned the screen toward me. I looked at it with the particular blankness of a man who was trying and failing to concentrate. "The regional restructuring I mentioned," she said, pointing to a column of figures. "I've been talking to some of our partners about shifting a few of the secondary lanes to more efficient operators. It should free up capacity for the core routes." I squinted at the screen. "Which secondary lanes?" "The connector runs. San Bernardino out to the Nevada border, the Central Valley feeders." She said it easily without hesitation. "Nothing that touches the main corridors." I knew she was wrong about that. The San Bernardino connector and the Central Valley feeders were not secondary. They were the arteries that fed the main corridors. Without them, the core routes would lose 20% of their incoming volume within 60 days. She either did not know that, which was impossible given her MBA and 4 years in the company, or she was counting on me not knowing it. I rubbed my eyes with the back of my hand. "Sounds like you've got it under control," I said. She smiled, warm, relieved. "I do. You just focus on getting better." I nodded slowly and looked back at the crossword puzzle in my lap. 7 across. A word for betrayal. 6 letters. I already knew the answer. I just was not ready to write it in yet. That evening, Ethan called back earlier than I expected. His voice had lost the easy warmth of the morning. What replaced it was the flat, careful tone of a man delivering news he wishes he did not have. "Walter," he said, "I found the name of the company that owns the truck that hit you. You need to sit down for this. Before I tell you what Ethan found, the one discovery that changed everything I thought I knew about my own daughter, drop the number 6 in the comments right now. Just that. Let me know you're still here with me, because what comes next is something I never saw coming, and I don't want you to miss it. Heads up, portions of this story include fictional elements woven in for storytelling purposes. If that's not something you'd like to hear, this is a good moment to step away, no hard feelings." I was already sitting up when Ethan said it. "Sierra Pacific Transport LLC, he said, "registered in Nevada. The listed agent is a law firm in Henderson that handles anonymous entity formation. They represent about 400 shell companies out of the same address. Standard setup for someone who does not want their name on a vehicle registration." I pressed the phone against my ear and kept very still. Outside the window of room 412, the Los Angeles sky had gone the deep orange of early evening, the kind of color that looks beautiful until you realize you have been staring at it for too long without blinking. "Who owns it?" I asked. "That's the part you need to sit down for." Ethan's voice had none of its usual ease. Every word was deliberate, placed carefully the way you place your feet on uncertain ground. "The beneficial owner of Sierra Pacific Transport traced through 2 layers of nominee directors and a Delaware holding company, is a trust administered on behalf of Audrey Christine Hayes. The room did not spin. I want to be clear about that, because people expect a moment like this to feel like a physical thing, like the floor dropping away or the walls moving in. It did not feel like that. It felt like the opposite, like everything went very still and very quiet and very small, and I was sitting in the center of it with a phone in my hand and 3 cracked ribs and the sudden absolute understanding that the person I had built everything for had put me in this bed. "Walter?" Ethan's voice came through the phone, rough and careful. "You still there?" "I'm here," I said. "I need you to know I checked this 4 times before I called you. 4 separate traces through 4 different databases. The result is the same every time. I believe you. I know you do." A long pause. I heard him exhale the breath of a man who has delivered terrible news before and knows there is nothing to do afterward but wait. "I'm sorry, Walter. I genuinely am." I set the phone down on the mattress without ending the call and looked at my hands. They were the same hands they had always been. Wide palms, calloused fingers, the scar on my left thumb from a cargo strap that had snapped on a loading dock in Fresno in 1993. 35 years of work written into the skin. I had used these hands to build something real, something that employed 340 people and moved freight across 5 states, and had a reputation that I had never once compromised. And my daughter had used it to put me in a hospital bed. I picked the phone back up. "Ethan, how long would it take to build a case, a real one, the kind that holds up?" "Depends what we're building it with." His voice steadied, shifting into the practical register of a man who had spent 2 decades investigating commercial transport violations. "Right now, I've got corporate records and a vehicle registration. That's a thread, not a rope. To make it a rope, I need financial records routing data and something that connects the shell company to an actual transaction, something physical." "Marcus has the drive," I said. "He's been collecting financial records for the past 3 months. Then I need Marcus." A pause. "And Walter, I have to be straight with you. I'm a retired FMCSA inspector. I can pull records and trace registrations, but I cannot walk this into a federal courtroom on my own. If what you're describing is what I think it is, we are going to need the FBI involved at some point. The question is when." "Not yet," I said. "Not until we know the full shape of it. If we move too early and they know we're coming, everything disappears." "Agreed." Another pause. "What are you going to do in the meantime?" I looked at the door of room 412. Through the narrow window beside the frame, I could see the hallway, the nurse's station, the soft institutional lighting, and orderly pushing a cart toward the elevator. "The same thing I've been doing," I said. "Nothing, as far as anyone can tell." After I ended the call with Ethan, I lay in the dark for a long time. I did not turn the television on. I did not pick up the crossword puzzle from the nightstand. I just lay there and let myself feel the full weight of what I now knew, because I had learned a long time ago that the only way to carry a heavy thing is to pick it up properly first. I thought about the morning I had taught Audrey to drive a truck. She was 16, and I had taken her to the yard on a Saturday morning before any of the crew arrived. She had been terrified and furious about being terrified, which was the most Audrey thing possible. She had ground the gears twice and stalled the engine once, and then on the 4th try, pulled the rig in a clean wide arc around the perimeter of the yard without touching a single cone. She had looked over at me with an expression I had never forgotten, not pride exactly, but something adjacent to it, the look of someone who has just discovered they are capable of something they doubted. I had thought, watching her face in that moment, that there was nothing in the world I would not do for this person. I still believed that. That was the thing I could not reconcile lying there in room 412 with the evidence stacked up on one side and 39 years stacked up on the other. The love had not gone anywhere. It was still there, taking up the same space it always had. It just hurt differently now. My phone buzzed on the mattress beside me. I looked at the screen. Audrey, calling from her cell. My thumb hovered over the answer button for 2 full seconds. Then I pressed it. "Dad." Her voice was warm and easy. The voice of a woman who had just finished a long day and was calling to check on her father. "How are you feeling? Did you eat anything real for dinner?" I closed my eyes, pressed my lips together until the tightness in my throat passed. "I had the chicken," I said. "It wasn't bad." "That's a low bar, but I'll take it." She laughed softly. "I'm going to come by tomorrow morning. I have some paperwork I need you to look at." "All right," I said. "I'll be here. Obviously you'll be there, Dad. you're in the hospital. Right. I let out a breath that I shaped into something resembling a laugh. Good night, Audrey. Good night. Get some sleep. I set the phone down when the call ended, stared at the ceiling, felt the ache in my ribs spread outward until it was not a physical thing anymore, until it was simply the feeling of a man who has just told his daughter good night while knowing what he knows. That was the first time in my life I had ever lied to Audrey by telling her the truth. I picked up the phone one more time, sent Marcus a single text message, call Ethan tomorrow, he needs the records. Then I closed my eyes and waited for morning. Ethan called back on a Tuesday morning, 48 hours after I had sent Marcus to him with the records. I knew from the first word he said that it was bad. Not because his voice was alarmed. Ethan Cole did not do. Alarmed had not done alarmed in the 30 years I had known him. But there was a particular quality to his stillness when he was carrying something heavy, a compression in the way he spoke, as though he was choosing every syllable with the care of a man diffusing something dangerous. Victor Langford, he said. I closed my eyes, pressed the back of my head against the pillow. The name landed in my chest like a stone dropped into still water, heavy, deliberate, sending ripples outward in every direction. Tell me, I said. Langford Capital Group, Newport Beach. He runs a private investment firm now, but before that, he spent 11 years as a senior administrator with the California Department of Transportation, Commercial Carrier Oversight Division. Ethan paused. He knows the freight industry from the inside, Walter. Knows the regulations, the loopholes, the enforcement gaps. He knows exactly how a company like yours operates and exactly where the blind spots are. I knew all of that already. What I needed to know was the part that came after. How did he get to Audrey? I asked. Ethan exhaled slowly. Best I can piece together from what Marcus gave me, Langford did not stumble into Audrey by accident. He targeted her deliberately. The Southern California Logistics Association annual dinner spring of 2023, Audrey was there representing Hayes Freight. Langford had already researched the company, the ownership structure, and the family. He knew exactly who she was before he crossed the room to introduce himself. The spring of 2023. I thought about that for a moment. Audrey had come home from that dinner talking about a man she had met someone interesting. She had said someone who actually understood the business. She had mentioned it only once and I had not thought to ask his name. My hand tightened around the phone until I felt the tendons pull across the back of my knuckles. She didn't know who he was, I said. It was not quite a question. She had no idea, Ethan said. He never used his connection to Hayes Freight in those early conversations. He introduced himself as a general freight industry investor. He was patient enough to spend 6 months building the relationship before he ever mentioned your company by name. By the time she understood what he was actually after, she was already in deep enough that getting out was complicated. I thought about Victor Langford sitting in the chair beside my hospital bed, with his patient smile and his paper cup of coffee. About the way he had said the offer stands, Walter, as though 6 years were nothing, as though he had simply been waiting. 6 years? He had been waiting for 6 years. The first time I had met Victor Langford was in January of 2017 in the main conference room on the second floor of the Hayes Freight Building in Commerce. He had come with 2 associates and a leather portfolio, and the particular brand of confidence that belongs to men who have decided before the meeting begins that they are going to get what they came for. He was polished, I will give him that. He knew the industry numbers, knew our route structure, knew our client relationships. He made his offer sound like a favor, like he was doing Hayes Freight a service by being willing to acquire it at all. The number he put on the table was 40% below market value. I remember the way his associates looked at each other when I said no. A quick private glance, the kind that passes between people who have rehearsed for many outcomes but did not seriously prepare for this one. Langford himself did not look at anyone. He looked at me. His expression did not change. I think you may be underestimating what the next 5 years look like for independent carriers your size, he said. I've been underestimated before, I told him. It's worked out all right. He held my gaze for a moment that stretched just a beat too long. Then he closed the leather portfolio, stood up and buttoned his jacket. He shook hands with the 2 associates. He did not shake hands with me. He simply walked to the door and left, and his associates followed, and that was the last time I had seen Victor Langford until he appeared in the chair beside my hospital bed in September. 6 years of silence, 6 years of patience, 6 years of watching and waiting and finding another way in. The way in had been my daughter. Walter, Ethan's voice pulled me back. There's something else. I steadied myself. Go ahead. The routing changes Marcus identified the 14 in September. I cross-referenced them against the ELD data from the trucks that ran those routes. ELD stood for Electronic Logging Device, the GPS-based tracking system required on all commercial vehicles under federal law, specifically 49 CFR, Part 395. Every movement of every truck in our fleet was recorded automatically continuously in data that could not be manually overridden. 3 of those routes show stop locations that are not in any of our client contracts: a warehouse facility in Fontana out in the Inland Empire, and a cold storage unit in a commercial district in Queens, New York. My stomach dropped. What was being stored? That's what I can't tell you from the ELD data alone. I can tell you where the trucks stopped and for how long. I can't tell you what came off them. He paused. But Walter, unauthorized stops at unlisted facilities combined with falsified cargo manifests and a shell company connected to your daughter points in a direction that goes well beyond internal fraud. I understood what he was not saying directly. Federal territory. The federal territory, he confirmed. Which is why I need you to understand something. The moment we bring evidence like this to the FBI, we cannot control what happens next. They will open their own investigation. They will move on their own timeline, and they will not be asking your permission. I know, I said, but we're not there yet. I need one more thing first. What's that? I need to know if Audrey understood what she was agreeing to, I said, or if Langford put her in a position where she felt she had no other choice. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Ethan said very quietly, "That matters to you." "She's my daughter," I said. "It will always matter to me." I ended the call and sat with the weight of everything Ethan had told me. Victor Langford had waited 6 years, found the one person who could give him access to everything he wanted, and built something patient and deliberate around her. Whether Audrey had walked into it willingly, or been maneuvered there, whether the line between those two things even existed anymore, was a question I was not yet ready to answer. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "One of the logistics coordinators came to me tonight. Her name is Sophie Mercer. She says she needs to talk. Walter, I think she knows something." Marcus called me at 7 the next morning, before the breakfast cart had made its rounds on the 4th floor. "I talked to her," he said. "Sophie Mercer. She's been with us 3 years. Logistics coordinator, Commerce Yard. Good worker. Quiet. The kind of person who shows up early and stays late and does not make a lot of noise about it." He paused. "Walter, she's scared. Really scared. But she wants to talk." "Set it up," I said. "Somewhere outside the building." "Already did. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from the yard on Telegraph Road." I told her 8:30. I spent the next hour lying in room 412, staring at the ceiling, thinking about a 29-year-old woman who had come to work for my company 3 years ago and had somehow ended up carrying something she should never have been asked to carry. I did not know yet what Sophie Mercer knew, but I knew what fear sounded like, even secondhand, even filtered through Marcus's careful voice. And what I heard in that description, "really scared," told me everything I needed to know about how bad it was. Marcus called again at 10:15 after the meeting. I could hear it in the first breath he took, that particular heaviness that settles into a person after they have listened to something that cannot be unheard. He had gone to the coffee shop on Telegraph Road, and he had sat across from Sophie Mercer, and he had listened to everything she had to say, and now he was sitting in his car in the parking lot behind the Hayes Freight Yard, calling me from his office line because it was the only line he trusted. "Start from the beginning," I said. "About 6 weeks ago," Marcus said, "Audrey called Sophie into her office and told her there were some changes to the manifest documentation process. New formatting requirements from a partner company. Sophie was to use a revised template for a specific subset of shipments, about 20% of the total volume. The template changed the cargo description fields." I closed my eyes. "Changed them how?" "Industrial cleaning supplies became general freight. Chemical compounds became equipment components. Hazardous material classifications were removed entirely." His voice was flat and controlled the voice of a man reciting facts, because reciting facts is the only way to keep his hands from shaking. Sophie did not understand what she was looking at first. She thought it was a compliance update. She ran the first batch through the new template and filed the paperwork. And then she looked more carefully at what she had filed. Marcus exhaled. "Walter, some of those cargo descriptions, the original ones before the template change, listed precursor chemicals. The kind that require special federal permits to transport. The kind that if you file the wrong manifest, you are not just committing freight fraud. You are potentially moving controlled substance precursors across state lines without proper authorization. The room felt very small suddenly, the walls of room 412 pressing in from all directions while I lay in the center of it with a phone against my ear and the slow, nauseating understanding of exactly how large this had become. "How long has she been running the falsified manifests?" I asked. "6 weeks, approximately 40 shipments." A pause. "She kept copies of everything, Walter. The original manifests, the revised ones, the emails from Audrey with the template instructions. She photographed them on her personal phone because she did not know what else to do. She was terrified to file a complaint internally. She did not know who she could trust. She was terrified to go to an outside agency because she did not know what would happen to her job, whether anyone would believe her word over Audrey Hayes. Sophie has been with us 3 years, I said. She has done nothing wrong. I know, and once I told her that, once I explained that her immigration status was not in play here, Marcus stopped. I heard him press his lips together, the particular sound of a man controlling himself carefully. "She started crying, Walter, right there in the coffee shop. She said she had been afraid for 6 weeks, and she had not told anyone because she did not think anyone would believe her over Audrey Hayes." I felt something move through my chest that was not quite grief and not quite fury. Something that lived in the space between those two things, hot and tight and too large for the container I was trying to keep it in. Sophie Mercer had been sitting in her office at the Commerce Yard for 6 weeks, running falsified paperwork for shipments. She did not understand carrying a fear she could not share with anyone because she worked for a company with my name on the side of every truck, and she did not believe that anyone who mattered would listen to her. That was my failure as much as anyone's, and I felt it the way you feel a truth that has been waiting for you suddenly and completely, with no possibility of arguing your way around it. "Tell me about the evidence she has," I said. "Videos," Marcus said. "She started recording on her phone about 2 weeks ago after she realized the manifests were not a compliance update. She recorded herself going through the filing process. You can see the original cargo descriptions. The template changes the final filed versions. She also has screenshots of the email chain from Audrey." He paused. "She recorded in the storage room in the back of the logistics office. No security cameras in there. I told her to keep doing it." "Good." I pressed my palm flat against the mattress. "Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Tell Sophie she is not alone in this. Tell her that what she did keeping those records coming to you took more courage than most people have. And tell her." I stopped, took a breath that pulled at my ribs. "Tell her that the name on the side of those trucks is supposed to mean something, and I intend to make sure it still does." Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its careful flatness. It was rougher now, the way a man's voice gets when he is holding something in that wants very badly to come out. "She asked me something," he said, "after I told her we were going to handle it. She asked why you built the company the way you did with the compliance systems, the record-keeping, the ELD tracking. She said she always thought it seemed like a lot of extra work for a freight company." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you built it that way because you believed that if you ran an honest operation, the paperwork would never have anything to hide." A pause. "She said that made sense. And then she said she was glad she had come to me." I closed my eyes. Outside the window, the Los Angeles morning was doing what Los Angeles mornings do, burning off the marine layer slowly, the sky shifting from gray to a pale washed-out blue that would deepen by noon into something almost beautiful. I was going to get out of this hospital. I was going to walk back into that building with my name on it. And when I did, I was going to make sure that every person who had trusted Hayes Freight, every driver, every coordinator, every warehouse worker who had shown up and done their job, honestly understood that the trust had not been misplaced. "Marcus," my voice came out steadier than I expected. "Tell Sophie to keep recording. Tell her to document everything. And Marcus," I stopped. "How are you holding up?" He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I've been better. I've also been a lot worse." Another pause. "You remember 2010? When Carol was sick and I didn't know how we were going to manage? I remember. You told me then that the company would handle it, that I shouldn't worry about the money side of things." His voice tightened slightly. "You never once asked me to pay it back, Walter. Not once in 15 years. You didn't need to pay it back. No, he said quietly, but I needed to know someone believed I was worth the risk. A long pause. I'm holding up fine. I'll talk to Sophie this afternoon. After the call ended, I set the phone on the nightstand and looked at the drawer where my phone had been siding. The night cross came through the room. I thought about everything that had been set in motion since then. Ethan and his records, Marcus and his timestamps, Sophie and her phone, full of evidence that a 29-year-old woman had gathered alone in a storage room because she believed it was the right thing to do. My phone buzzed once. A text from Marcus. Audrey just called a staff meeting for tomorrow morning. She's asking Sophie to present the new manifest process to the full logistics team. My jaw tightened until I felt it in my back teeth. She was going to make Sophie stand in front of her colleagues and explain the falsified system. Make her complicit in public. Make it harder for her to walk away. I typed back 4 words, tell Sophie to go. Then I added 3 more, and keep recording. The staff meeting lasted 45 minutes. Marcus called me the moment he got back to his office, and I could hear in his voice the particular tension of a man who has just sat in a room and watched something unfold that he could not stop and was not supposed to stop. Sophie did what you asked, he said. She stood up there and walked through the new manifest process in front of the whole logistics team. 18 people. She kept her voice steady. She did not look at Audrey once. A pause. I don't know how she managed it, Walter. I genuinely don't. She managed it because she had to, I said. What happened after? Audrey thanked her, very warmly, very publicly. Marcus's voice carried something underneath the words, a kind of controlled disgust that he was working hard to keep out of his tone. And then, at the end of the meeting, Audrey mentioned casually, like it was an afterthought, that she had noticed some irregularities in the accounts payable records from the past quarter. She said she wanted the financial team to do a full internal review. He stopped. She looked at me when she said it, Walter. I pressed my palm flat against the mattress. My jaw tightened. She's setting you up. That's what it felt like. His voice was steady, but I heard the effort behind it, the effort of a man who has kept his composure in difficult rooms for 22 years and is calling on every year of that practice now. I stayed after the meeting and asked her directly if there was a specific concern I should know about. She smiled and said she just wanted to make sure everything was in order. She said it the way people say things when they mean the opposite. Marcus listened to me carefully. I kept my voice low and even. Do not go back into that building tonight. Go home, stay away from the system, and do not respond to any requests for financial records until I tell you otherwise. Already planned on it. A brief pause. But, Walter, there's something else. When I was walking to my car after the meeting, I noticed a man in the parking lot. Dark sedan stayed in the vehicle. He was there when I arrived and still there when I left. LAPD plates. Cross. Running surveillance on Marcus, the way he ran every operation quietly, patiently, with the practiced invisibility of someone who had learned a long time ago that the most effective observation is the kind the subject never notices. How long do you think you have? I asked. Before she makes a formal accusation, a week, maybe less. He exhaled slowly. Walter, I have everything. 3 months of records, emails, transaction logs, the original routing authorizations before they were overwritten, the payment schedules for the shell accounts, everything I've collected since July. But if she reports me to the board before I can get it to Ethan, get it to Ethan today, I said. Right now, drive to Sacramento if you have to. I was going to suggest the same thing. A pause, and then his voice shifted, dropping into something quieter, more personal. Something that reminded me of a phone call from a hospital parking lot 15 years ago. Walter, whatever happens in the next few days, I need you to know something. Marcus, let me say it. He steadied himself. You gave me $40,000 in 2010 without asking a single question. You told me to take care of Carol and not to think about the company. You said the company would still be there when things settled down. His voice tightened. The company was still there, because of you. And I have spent 15 years making sure I was worthy of that. A long pause. I'm going to get this right, I promise you that. My throat constricted until I had to look at the window, at the pale midday sky above Commerce, and press my lips together until the feeling passed. I know you will, I said. Go, drive safe. Ethan called me at 4 in the afternoon, 2 hours after Marcus had arrived at his house in Sacramento, with a portable drive containing everything he had collected since July. The timestamps are clean. Ethan said, and I heard the quiet satisfaction in his voice of a man whose suspicion has been confirmed by evidence. Every transaction Marcus authorized, every single one, carries an approval timestamp from before the corresponding entries were modified. In some cases, the gap is as little as 4 hours. In others, it's several days. He paused. Whoever altered those records was careful, but they were not careful enough to account for the fact that the original authorization logs are stored on a separate server that only syncs once every 72 hours. The modifications show up in the primary system. The original approvals show up in the sync backup. The two records don't match. Meaning Marcus approved legitimate transactions, I said, and someone else changed the numbers after the fact. Correct. Marcus Reed is clean. More than clean, he has been systematically documenting this for 3 months, which is the only reason we have the backup records to compare against. Ethan's voice was careful and precise, the voice of a man who had written a great many federal investigative reports and knew how to build a factual foundation. Walter, what Marcus has given me, combined with Sophie's manifests and the ELD data, this is no longer a thread. This is a rope. I sat with that for a moment. A rope. Something strong enough to hold weight. Something that in the right hands could be used to pull a structure down. How long before we can move? I asked. I need 48 hours to organize the documents into a format that a federal agent can actually use. After that, he stopped. Walter, there's something you need to know before we take this to the FBI. Tell me. I ran the financial traces on the shell accounts Marcus identified. The money moving through the falsified shipments is not going to Victor Langford directly. It's passing through 3 intermediate entities before it reaches Langford Capital Group. One of those intermediate entities is a charitable organization registered in California. A pause. It's called the California Senior Assistance Fund. The listed director is Deputy Chief Everett Shaw of the Los Angeles Police Department. The name hit me like a physical thing, a sudden pressure behind my sternum that had nothing to do with broken ribs. A deputy chief of police, connected to the money, connected to Cross, connected to the shell companies that had used my trucks to move chemicals across 5 states. Crossworks Commercial Transport Division, I said slowly. Shaw's his superior. As Shaw is his superior's superior, Ethan confirmed. Which means when Victor Langford needed law enforcement coverage for this operation, he did not go to a street-level officer. He went to someone with enough rank to make problems disappear before they became problems. I closed my eyes, pressed the back of my hand against my mouth for a moment. The scope of it, the patience of it, the architecture of it, the number of people who had been persuaded or purchased or positioned, settled over me like something heavy and cold. My company had been used as the foundation for all of it. My name, my trucks, my roots, my 35 years of reputation for reliability and honesty had been the perfect cover, because no one looks twice at a freight company that has never given them a reason to look. I had built something so trustworthy that it had become the ideal vehicle for betrayal. Before I could speak, my phone buzzed in my hand. I pulled it away from my ear and looked at the screen. A notification from the hospital's patient portal. A document had been added to my file by the medical records department. I opened it. It was not a medical document. It was a legal notice. The header read, Superior Court of California County of Los Angeles Probate Division. Below that, in language I recognized immediately from 35 years of signing documents, petition for appointment of conservator of the estate of Walter James Hayes. The petitioner was listed as Audrey Christine Hayes. I put the phone back to my ear. Ethan, I said. She just filed. A silence on the line, brief, controlled. The conservatorship. Yes. How long ago? I checked the timestamp on the document. The court received it this morning. I'm looking at the notice now. I read through the supporting documentation attached to the petition. A medical report from Dr. Harmon at Cedars-Sinai, assessing my cognitive function in the weeks following the head trauma. The language was clinical and precise, and described a patient whose judgment and decision-making capacity had been meaningfully compromised by the injury. Dr. Harmon, who had been careful and patient and thorough, who had asked me the same baseline cognitive assessment questions 3 times over 2 weeks, and whose notes I now understood had been shaped into something they were never meant to be. She bought a doctor, I said, or Langford did. Ethan's voice was flat and certain. Walter, this changes the timeline. The petition itself does not transfer control immediately. The court will appoint an independent investigator and schedule a hearing. But Audrey has also filed an emergency motion for temporary conservatorship, which a judge can grant within 72 hours without a full hearing if the medical documentation appears credible. If that temporary order goes through before we can present counter evidence, she gains provisional control of your estate, including your 75% stake in Hayes Freight, while the full hearing is pending. Unwinding that, even after the fraud is exposed, takes months. I looked at the legal notice on my phone screen, at my own name in the header, followed by the word petitioner attached to my daughter's. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles ached. "Then we move faster," I said. "Who do I call about a conservatorship defense?" "Someone who does this for a living," Ethan said. "Elder law attorney, corporate fraud experience, Los Angeles. I'll have a name for you within the hour." I set the phone down on the nightstand and looked at the ceiling of room 412. Outside in the hallway, a cart rolled past. Someone laughed at the nurse's station. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary afternoon in a hospital where extraordinary things were happening in room 412, to a man nobody had thought to look at twice. I picked up the phone again and started searching. I have read a great many legal documents in 35 years of running a freight company. Partnership agreements, carrier contracts, insurance policies, regulatory filings, lease agreements for yard space in 5 different states. I had learned early that the most dangerous sentence in any document is never the one written in large type at the top. It is always the one buried in the middle of page 7 in the same font as everything around it, designed to look like it belongs there. The conservatorship petition was 42 pages long. I read all of it, twice. In the pale afternoon light of room 412, with the monitoring equipment humming beside me and the sound of the hallway outside the door, I read every paragraph of the document that my daughter had filed with the probate division of the Los Angeles Superior Court under California Probate Code. Section 1801. The legal standard for conservatorship of an estate is a person who is substantially unable to manage his or her own financial resources or to resist fraud or undue influence. Audrey's petition argued that I met that standard, that the head trauma I had sustained in the accident, the injury her shell company had arranged, had left me cognitively compromised in ways that made independent management of my assets dangerous to my own interests. The petition was built on a foundation of medical documentation, specifically a detailed assessment authored by Dr. Raymond Harmon of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, my attending physician, in which he described a patient who demonstrated confusion-impaired short-term memory, difficulty processing complex information, and reduced capacity for sound financial judgment. I put the petition down on my lap and looked at the window for a moment. Dr. Harmon had asked me during our second week together to describe the route I would take driving from the Commerce Yard to the Port of Long Beach. I had described it correctly, including the construction detour on the 710 that had been in place since August. He had asked me to recall 3 words table pencil, September, and then asked me to repeat them 15 minutes later after we had talked about something else. I had repeated them correctly. He had asked me whether I trusted the people managing my company while I recovered. I had said yes. I had been playing the role of a man who trusted his daughter. I had played it well. Now I understood that Dr. Harmon had been playing a role too. His assessment described a man who had struggled with those memory exercises, a man who had expressed confusion about the company's operations, a man who had demonstrated, quote, an inability to critically evaluate information presented by family members in positions of authority. None of that was true. Every word of it was a lie told by a doctor who had treated me for 6 weeks and had either been paid to lie or had been placed in a position where lying felt safer than the alternative. My jaw tightened until I felt it in my back teeth. I breathed through it, counted to 10 the way Margaret had taught me when I was 32 years old, and furious about a contract dispute that I had eventually won by staying calm when the other side expected me to lose my temper. Then I picked up my phone and called the number Ethan had sent me. Helen Vance answered on the second ring. She had a voice that was direct without being sharp, the voice of someone who had learned a long time ago that the most effective way to convey authority was simply to mean every word you said. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "Ethan Cole called me an hour ago. I've been expecting you. Then you know what I'm dealing with. I know the outline. Tell me the rest." I told her. All of it. The petition, the medical assessment, Dr. Harmon's role, the timeline of the accident, the shell company Victor Langford, the falsified freight manifests the conservatorship, as the mechanism Audrey needed because she could not remove me through a shareholder vote. I did not rush. Helen Vance was the kind of person you did not rush, not because she would be offended, but because rushing would cost you precision, and precision was the only currency that mattered in the conversation we were having. When I finished, she was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. I counted them. "All right," she said. "Here is what we are going to do. 2 things simultaneously. First, under California Probate Code, Section 1826, I am filing a request for independent medical examination, today a court-appointed physician, completely separate from Cedars-Sinai. Second, and more urgently, Audrey has included an emergency motion for temporary conservatorship in this petition. That is the real danger. A temporary order can be granted ex parte, meaning without you present if a judge finds the medical documentation compelling. I am filing an immediate opposition to the emergency motion. My argument is that a man who managed a 230-vehicle freight company for 35 years does not require emergency financial protection based on a 6-week medical assessment authored by a physician who received $80,000 from the opposing party's primary financial backer. The temporary motion will not survive that opposition. Now, how long does that buy us? 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the court's calendar. Enough time to build a defense, and if the criminal evidence is as strong as you're describing, enough time for the FBI to become involved in a way that changes the legal landscape entirely." A pause. "Now, the physician who wrote the assessment supporting this petition, Dr. Harmon, do you have any reason to believe he was compensated for producing a favorable report?" I thought about the careful way Ethan had described the financial traces, the shell accounts, the layers of intermediate entities, the California Senior Assistance Fund. "I believe he was," I said. "I don't have direct proof yet, but the man who is funding this operation has access to significant financial resources and a demonstrated willingness to purchase cooperation. Under California Penal Code, Section 67, paying a professional to provide false testimony or documentation constitutes criminal bribery," Helen said. Section 2234 of the Business and Professions Code addresses physicians specifically producing false medical reports for financial gain is grounds for criminal prosecution and permanent license revocation. Her voice carried the particular satisfaction of a woman identifying the right tools for a specific job. "If we can establish that Dr. Harmon received payment, the medical foundation of this petition collapses. And without the medical foundation, there is no petition." "How do we establish it?" "That's a question for your investigator and ultimately for the FBI. My job is to keep the court from acting on this petition before the truth has a chance to catch up with it." Another pause. "Mr. Hayes, I want to ask you something directly." "Go ahead." "The petitioner is your daughter. If this proceeds to a full evidentiary hearing, if we put the medical documentation, the financial records, and the criminal conduct in front of a judge, it will not be possible to separate her involvement from the larger conspiracy. She will be exposed, fully and publicly." Helen's voice was level and careful. "I need to know whether that changes anything for you." I looked at the window of room 412, at the afternoon light that had gone golden now, the way Los Angeles light goes golden in November when the air is clear and the Santa Ana winds have pushed the marine layer back out to sea. I thought about Audrey at 11 years old, folding a napkin at the kitchen table in her black dress. I thought about her at 16, pulling the Peterbilt in a clean arc around the perimeter of the yard. I thought about her face in this room 2 weeks ago, warm and easy and funny, and about the way she had said, "Do not let them talk you into the meatloaf," and about the fact that the woman who had said that was the same woman whose name was printed at the top of a 42-page legal petition designed to take everything I had built away from me. "It doesn't change anything," I said. "What she did has consequences. That's not something I can protect her from." A pause. "Understood." Helen Vance's voice was quiet for a moment, not soft exactly, but human in a way that it had not been before. "I will file the Section 1826 request within the hour. I will also request a copy of Dr. Harmon's complete financial records from the court as part of our discovery process. If there is a payment, we will find it." "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's done." A brief pause. "One more thing, Mr. Hayes. Until this is resolved, do not sign anything. Not a medical form, not a hospital release, not a get-well card. Nothing with your signature goes anywhere without my approval. Do you understand?" "Perfectly." "Good." And I heard underneath the professionalism something that might have been respect. Get some rest, you're going to need to be sharp. After the call ended, I set the phone down on the nightstand and let out a breath that had been sitting in my chest for the better part of an hour. My ribs ached, my head throbbed at the base of my skull. The November light was turning the window orange and gold, and somewhere in the building, Victor Langford had purchased access to a doctor named Harmon, was going about his afternoon rounds, without knowing that the petition he had signed his name to had just become the thread that would unravel everything. I reached over and opened the drawer of the nightstand. Inside, next to my reading glasses and my phone charger, was the business card Daniel Cross had left on my tray table 6 weeks ago. I picked it up, turned it over once. Then I dropped it into the trash can beside the bed. I had better people working on this now. Helen Vance filed the Section 1826 request at 4:47 that afternoon. I know the exact time because she sent me a confirmation message with the court filing timestamp attached along with a single line of text that read, "Motion filed. The clock is running in our favor now." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and felt for the first time in 6 weeks something that was not quite hope, but was close enough to it that I recognized the feeling. It did not last long. Hope rarely does when you understand the full shape of what you are dealing with. Ethan called the following morning with the financial trace results. $80,000, he said without preamble. Transferred in 2 installments, $40,000 in late August, $40,000 in early September, from a holding account connected to one of Langford Capital Group's subsidiary entities into a personal account belonging to Dr. Raymond Harmon. A pause. The first payment was made 3 weeks before your accident, Walter. The second was made 4 days after you were admitted to Cedars-Sinai. I absorbed that, turned it over. He was paid before the accident, which means the medical assessment was not improvised. It was planned. Someone decided before you were ever in that hospital bed that they were going to need a doctor who would say what they needed him to say. Ethan's voice was flat and certain. Victor Langford did not react to your accident, Walter. He engineered it and then built the medical documentation around it while you were still in surgery. My hand tightened around the phone. Outside the window, the November sky was the flat, featureless gray of a city that had forgotten how to rain. I pressed my back against the pillow and breathed through the tightness in my chest until it became manageable. The payment goes to Helen, I said. Today. Already sending it. A pause. There's something else. Under California Penal Code Section 67, paying a private citizen, including a physician, to produce false documentation constitutes criminal bribery. Section 22. 34 covers professional misconduct specifically. But Walter Ethan stopped. Chose his next words with care. Cross is a different matter. He is a sworn law enforcement officer, a public official. Payments made to a public official in exchange for official acts fall under federal statute 18 United States Code, Section 201. That is a federal bribery charge. Minimum 2 years, maximum 15. Has the money been traced to Cross? 3 payments. Total of $62,000 over 18 months routed through the same intermediate account structure Langford used for Harmon. A pause. Cross has been on Langford's payroll since before the fraud began. He was not recruited after the fact. He was part of the original architecture. I thought about Cross sitting in the chair beside my hospital bed that first night, warning me about Audrey while his eyes moved around the room, looking for the USB drive. He had been paid $62,000 to make sure the operation ran smoothly. Walking into my hospital room had been a business decision, not a personal one. Does Cross know we have the financial records? I asked. Not yet, but Langford does. Ethan's voice tightened. I have a contact at a commercial real estate firm in Newport Beach, someone who worked with Langford Capital Group 3 years ago and has been watching the company since. She called me this morning. There was an emergency meeting at Langford's office yesterday afternoon. After the meeting, 2 of his senior associates flew to New York. The pattern looks like asset movement. Victor knew. Somehow, through his contacts in the court system, through someone in Helen Vance's office, through a connection at the probate division, Victor Langford had learned that the conservatorship petition was being challenged, and he had started moving. How much time do we have? I asked. Less than we did yesterday, Ethan said. Which is why I need you to let me contact the FBI today, not tomorrow, today. I thought about what Ethan had said 2 weeks ago. Once we bring this to the FBI, we cannot control what happens next. I had wanted to wait until I understood the full shape of it. I understood the shape of it now. It was larger than I had imagined and more deliberate than I had feared, and waiting any longer was not caution. It was a luxury I could no longer afford. "Make the call," I said. What happened next reached me secondhand the way most things reached me during those weeks in room 412, through phone calls and text messages, and the careful reconstruction of events I had not been present for. What I know is this: Victor Langford received confirmation that Helen Vance had filed the independent medical examination request at approximately 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. By 6 o'clock, he had placed a call to Daniel Cross. I know what was said in that call because Cross told the FBI about it 6 days later in a conference room on the 11th floor of the federal building on Wilshire Boulevard. He described it in the flat, precise language of a man who has decided that accuracy is his only remaining asset. Victor had said 4 words: "Clean it up, Daniel." Cross had understood what those 4 words meant. He had been in law enforcement for 19 years. He had worked commercial transport division for 6 of them. He knew what it looked like when a principal decided to sever a connection, and he knew what severing a connection looked like from the perspective of the connection being severed. He told the FBI that he sat in his car in the parking structure beneath the Langford Capital Group building in Newport Beach for 22 minutes after that call ended. He sat there and thought about the $62,000 that had moved through the intermediate account over the past 18 months. He thought about the camera footage he had deleted from the intersection at Slauson and Eastern on the morning of Walter Hayes' accident. He thought about the hospital room he had entered through a locked door on a Tuesday night in September. He thought about all of it. And then he thought about what happens to a man who knows too much and has become inconvenient. Cross had spent 19 years watching other people make the calculation between loyalty and survival. He had always assumed when it came to his own moment that he would make it differently, that there would be some version of honor involved. Sitting in that parking structure with Victor Langford's 4 words still ringing in his ears, he understood that he had been wrong about that. There was no honor in this. There was only the math. He called his personal attorney from the car. Then he drove home, made himself a cup of coffee, and sat at his kitchen table until 8 in the morning. Then he drove to the federal building on Wilshire Boulevard and asked to speak with someone from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. He did not call Langford back. He did not warn Audrey. He did not send a message to Deputy Chief Shaw. He just drove to Wilshire Boulevard and walked through the front door because that was the only move left on the board that did not end with him in a cell. I did not know any of this when it happened. I was lying in room 412, looking at the ceiling, thinking about my daughter and a doctor who had sold his professional integrity for $80,000, and a man named Victor who had been patient enough to wait 6 years for the right moment. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan, 3 words: "FBI made contact." I set the phone down on the mattress, pressed both palms flat against the blanket, felt the ache in my ribs that had become over the past 2 months as familiar as my own heartbeat. Then, outside in the hallway, I heard the particular sound of footsteps stopping outside room 412. Not the rolling gait of a nurse doing rounds, not the purposeful stride of Dr. Harmon, slower, more deliberate. The footsteps paused outside my door for 3 full seconds. Then they moved on. I lay very still and listened to them fade down the corridor. Whoever it was, they had stopped, they had looked, and they had decided for now to keep walking. I thought about Sophie Mercer alone in a storage room, with a phone in her hand, recording things she was terrified to know. I thought about Marcus driving through the night to Sacramento, with a portable drive that held 3 months of evidence. I thought about Ethan cross-referencing financial records in a house in the Sacramento Hills, with the same patience he had brought to every inspection report he had ever written. They were all out there doing what needed to be done. And tomorrow, a 29-year-old woman named Sophie Mercer was going to walk into a building on Wilshire Boulevard and do something that took more courage than anything I had managed from this hospital bed. I owed all of them better than room 412. I picked up my phone and called Dr. Harmon's office line. When his assistant answered, I asked to schedule a discharge evaluation for the following week. It was time to start getting out of this bed. Cross did not walk into the FBI Los Angeles field office unannounced. The night before, after sitting in the parking structure for 22 minutes, he had called his personal attorney from the car. His attorney had made 2 calls, one to a former federal prosecutor he knew, and one to the FBI's Los Angeles field office duty agent. By 7 in the morning, a meeting had been arranged. Cross walked into 11,000 Wilshire Boulevard at 7:53, knowing exactly who he was going to see and what he was going to say. His eyes carried the particular flatness of a man who has spent the night making a decision he cannot unmake, and his hands when he placed them on the reception desk were steadier than they had any right to be. The duty agent escorted him directly to the 11th floor. The agent at the desk looked at him for a moment, then picked up the phone. 15 minutes later, Cross was sitting in a conference room on the 11th floor across from Special Agent Rebecca Okafor. She was younger than he had expected, early 40s, with the kind of stillness that belongs to people who have learned to make silence work for them in an interview room. She placed a legal pad on the table in front of her, uncapped a pen, and looked at him with an expression that gave away nothing. "You came in voluntarily," she said. "That matters. Tell me why you're here." Cross leaned forward and pressed both palms flat against the table. His jaw tightened once. Then he started talking. He talked for 2 hours. He described the first contact from Victor Langford 3 years ago, a meeting arranged through an intermediary at a department function in downtown Los Angeles. He described the payment, $62,000 over 18 months, routed through a real estate holding company in Torrance to avoid direct traceability. He described his role in the operation, running surveillance on Hayes freight vehicles, ensuring that LAPD commercial transport citations were directed away from trucks running the falsified manifests, and deleting the camera footage at the Slauson and Eastern intersection on the morning of Walter Hayes' accident. Rebecca Okafor wrote steadily throughout. She did not interrupt. She did not react visibly to anything he said. She simply wrote and listened, and occasionally asked a precise, clarifying question that told him she already knew more than she was letting on. When he finished, she set the pen down and looked at him. "Did you know when you deleted that camera footage," she said, "that Walter Hayes was going to be seriously injured in that accident?" Cross held her gaze. His jaw moved once, a small, involuntary tightening that he controlled before it became anything more. Then he looked down at the table. "I knew a vehicle incident was planned," he said. "I did not know the severity. But you deleted the footage anyway." "Yes." Rebecca Okafor picked up her pen again. "And when you entered Mr. Hayes' hospital room on the night of September 19th, did you know at that point that he had not done anything wrong?" The room was very quiet. Cross could hear the ventilation system running above the drop ceiling. He could hear faintly the sound of the city 11 floors below. "Yes," he said. "I knew." Rebecca wrote something on the legal pad. Then she looked up. "I'm going to step out for 10 minutes. When I come back, we're going to talk about what cooperation looks like and what it does not look like. I want you to think carefully about the difference between those two things while I'm gone." She stood, capped her pen, and walked out of the room without looking back. Cross sat alone in the conference room. He pressed both hands against the table and looked at them. The hands of a man who had spent 19 years in law enforcement and had spent the last 18 months using that career as cover for something he could no longer justify to himself in any language that made sense. He had told himself when Langford first approached him that it was temporary, that he would take the money, do what was asked, and walk away clean when it was over. He had told himself that no one would be seriously hurt. He had told himself a great many things in the privacy of his own reasoning that had turned out to be convenient rather than true. Rebecca Okafor returned in exactly 10 minutes. She sat down, opened the legal pad to a fresh page, and looked at him with the same neutral expression. "Here is what cooperation looks like," she said. "Full disclosure, no omissions, no hedging, no protecting anyone. Every name, every payment, every instruction you received, and every action you took. In exchange, your attorney and the federal prosecutor will discuss the terms of a proffer agreement. That is not a guarantee of anything. It is an opportunity." "I understand," Cross said. "Good." She picked up her pen. "Then let's start with Deputy Chief Everett Shaw. That afternoon I was lying in room 412 when Ethan sent me a second text message. 2 words this time. He's talking. I read it, set the phone on the nightstand, looked at the ceiling, and felt something shift in my chest that was not quite relief and not quite grief. Something in between the feeling of a man watching a long and difficult thing finally begin to move in the right direction. What I did not know then was that at that exact moment on the sidewalk outside 11,000 Wilshire Boulevard, a 29-year-old woman named Sophie Mercer was standing in the November morning air, looking up at the building's glass facade. She had her phone in her bag and 3 months of evidence on it. She had been standing there for 14 minutes. She was terrified, and she was still there. Sophie Mercer walked through the front entrance of the federal building at 11,000 Wilshire Boulevard at 8:21 in the morning. She had almost left twice. The first time she had turned around and taken 4 steps back toward the parking structure before stopping herself. The second time she had taken out her phone and started composing a text message to Marcus, telling him she could not do it. And then she had read back what she had typed and thought about her father, who had driven a truck across California for 22 years, without ever once complaining that the roads were hard, and she had deleted the message and walked through the door. The woman at the reception desk directed her to the 3rd floor. A different agent escorted her to a room. Sophie sat in a plastic chair in a beige hallway and held her bag in her lap and told herself to breathe. When Rebecca Okafor opened the door and introduced herself, Sophie stood up so quickly that her bag nearly slid off her shoulder. "It's all right," Rebecca said. "Take your time." Sophie followed her into the room and sat down across the table. She placed her bag on her lap, reached inside, and took out her phone. She set it on the table between them. "Everything is on here," she said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. "Videos, emails, the original manifests before they were changed, the revised versions after. 47 shipments. I dated and labeled everything the way Marcus told me to." Rebecca looked at the phone, but did not immediately pick it up. She looked at Sophie instead. "Before we look at this," she said, "I want to make sure you understand something. You came here voluntarily. Nothing you tell me today can be used against you without your knowledge and consent. You have the right to have an attorney present." A pause. "Do you want to call someone before we continue?" Sophie shook her head. "I just want this to stop." Rebecca nodded once. Then she picked up the phone. She watched the first video without speaking. In it, Sophie's hands were visible on a desk in what appeared to be a storage room, concrete walls, metal shelving, fluorescent light. She was going through 2 sets of manifest documents side by side, holding them up one at a time, toward the camera, reading the cargo descriptions aloud. The original documents listed regulated chemical compounds with their proper classification codes. The revised versions listed general freight and equipment components. Sophie's voice on the recording was quiet and slightly unsteady, but every word was clear. Rebecca watched 3 more videos. Then she set the phone down and looked at Sophie. "How long were you doing this before you told anyone?" 6 weeks. Sophie's jaw tightened. "I know that's a long time. I kept thinking I had misunderstood, that there was an explanation I wasn't seeing." She pressed her lips together. "There wasn't. You went to Marcus Reed. He was the only person in the building I trusted." Sophie looked at her hands on the table. Her fingers were laced together, tightly, knuckles pale. "He told me about Mr. Hayes, about what was happening. He told me Mr. Hayes had built the company a certain way because he believed honest paperwork never had anything to hide." Her voice caught slightly. "My father drove trucks for 22 years. He worked for companies that did not care whether he went home at night. He used to say the only thing a driver has is his record, his hours, his routes, his delivery logs. If those are honest, nobody can take anything from him." She looked up at Rebecca. "I was making those records dishonest. I was doing it to a company built by someone who believed the same thing my father believed. I could not keep doing it." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You're going to be okay, Miss Mercer." Sophie nodded. Her eyes were bright and wet at the edges, but she did not let the tears fall. She had been holding them back for 6 weeks. She could hold them a little longer. "One more thing," Rebecca said. "Is there anyone at Hayes Freight who knew you were coming here today? Marcus? No one else? And you have not been in contact with anyone else connected to this investigation?" Sophie shook her head. She did not know who else might be connected. She did not know about Cross. She did not know about Ethan Cole or Helen Vance or the conservatorship petition filed in probate court, or the 4 words Victor Langford had said to a man in a parking structure in Newport Beach. She knew only what she had seen in a storage room with concrete walls and fluorescent light, and she had brought all of it here and set it on the table. Rebecca stood. "I'll be back in a few minutes. There's coffee in the hallway if you want it." After she left, Sophie sat alone in the room. She unclenched her hands and laid them flat on the table, palms down, felt the solid surface beneath them, breathed. Her phone was still on the table. Rebecca had not taken it. That meant the videos were still there, all of them. Everyone she had recorded in the storage room over 6 weeks on her lunch breaks, and after hours and once at 6 in the morning before anyone else arrived. 47 manifests. 47 times she had looked at what she was being asked to do and understood that it was wrong. She had been terrified every single time. She was still terrified now. But she was here. Through the wall, she heard the muffled sound of Rebecca Okafor's voice, precise, and controlled the voice of someone giving instructions. Then the words clear enough to make out, "Pull every ELD record from Hayes Freight vehicles, all of them, September through December, and get DEA on the line." Sophie did not know what ELD meant. She did not know what DEA stood for in this context. She knew only that something had shifted in the room beyond the wall, and that whatever she had carried through the front door of this building that morning was larger than she had understood. She picked up her phone from the table, unlocked the screen, and opened her messages. She typed 3 words to Marcus. "I did it." Then she sat back in the plastic chair and waited. Ethan called on a Tuesday afternoon in late November. I had been awake since 5 in the morning, not from pain which had settled into something manageable over the past weeks, but from the particular restlessness of a man who knows the end of something is close and cannot stop his mind from running the calculations. 23, Ethan said. Just the number, nothing else. He knew I would understand. "Tell me," I said. 23 routes over 4 months, September through December. All of them show stop locations that do not appear in any Hayes Freight client contract. He laid it out the way he laid out everything methodically without drama, in the flat cadence of a man who had spent 20 years writing federal inspection reports. The electronic logging device data does not lie, Walter. Under 49 CFR, Part 395, every commercial vehicle in your fleet is required to record its location continuously. The data cannot be manually overridden. Whatever those trucks did, the devices recorded it. Where did they stop? A warehouse facility in Fontana, out in the Inland Empire, approximately 60 miles east of your commerce yard, and a cold storage unit in Jamaica Queens' outer borough of New York Commercial District, near the freight rail corridor. A pause. DEA confirmed the nature of the materials late yesterday afternoon. Precursor chemicals, specifically compounds used in the production of controlled substances, regulated under 21 United States Code, Sections 841 and 846. Moving those materials across state lines without proper federal authorization is a serious felony. I pressed my palm against the mattress. Outside, the November afternoon was doing what November afternoons do in Los Angeles, turning the lights slow and golden, making everything look quieter than it was. "The drivers," I said. "My drivers. Clean." Ethan's voice was certain. "Every single one of them. They drove the routes they were dispatched on. The stop locations were programmed into the dispatch system after the routes were assigned. The drivers had no reason to question them. As far as their paperwork showed, those stops were authorized client locations." A pause. "Walter, your people did nothing wrong." I closed my eyes. Let that settle into me the way good news settles slowly, carefully, like something fragile that might not survive rough handling. 340 employees. Every one of them had shown up, done their job, and trusted that the company they worked for meant what it said. They had been right to trust it. The corruption had not reached them. It had moved around them through the systems above them, in the spaces they could not see. "What does Rebecca need from me?" I asked. "The shareholders' meeting," Ethan said. "Audrey filed notice this morning. Emergency session, Hayes Freight Conference Room, Wednesday of next week, 10 o'clock. A pause that carried weight. "She's moving to formalize the conservatorship before the independent medical examination can be completed. She needs the board on record supporting the petition." I understood the strategy immediately. If Audrey could get the board to formally endorse the conservatorship petition before Helen's independent examiner submitted a counter-assessment, it would create a public record that would take months to unwind even after the fraud was exposed. "Rebecca wants to use it," I said. "She wants to make the arrest at the meeting, Audrey and Victor together, before either of them realizes the walls are closing." Ethan's voice was steady and measured. "Victor will be there. He needs to be seen supporting the transfer of control. It is the last piece of the performance." I thought about the conference room on the second floor, the long table where I had sat for 30 years. The window that looked out over the yard, where the trucks lined up every morning before first light. "How long do I have to get ready?" I asked. 8 days. 8 days. After 3 months in a hospital bed, 8 days felt like nothing. It also felt like everything. "Walter." Ethan's voice shifted, dropping into something quieter, more personal, the register he used when he was talking to his friend rather than his client. "How are you holding up?" My throat tightened. I looked at the window. At the golden afternoon light that Margaret had always said was the best thing about living in California, the way the light went warm in November, as if the year was letting go of something it had been holding too tightly. "I've been better," I said. "I've also been worse." I pressed my lips together for a moment. "Ethan, thank you for all of it." "Don't thank me," he said quietly. "Just walk back into that building." After the call ended, I set the phone on the nightstand and looked at the suit jacket hanging on the back of the closet door. The navy blue one Ethan had brought from my house 2 weeks ago, pressed and ready. I had been looking at it every morning when I woke up. 8 days. I reached over and opened the drawer of the nightstand. Inside, beneath my reading glasses, was a folded piece of paper, a note I had written to myself 3 months ago, the morning after Cross had searched this room and found nothing. It said, "Do not move first. Wait until they show you everything, then move once." I had waited. They had shown me everything. It was time to move. Before I walk you through what happened inside that conference room, the moment 3 months of waiting finally became something, comment the word justice below. So I know you made it this far, because what Walter did next, most people never get the chance to do. A reminder. This story carries fictional elements crafted for reflection and entertainment. If you'd prefer to step away before the ending, now is the time, but I think you'll want to stay. The suit still fit. Not perfectly. I had lost weight in the hospital the way men lose weight when they spend 3 months lying still and eating what is placed in front of them, rather than what they would choose. The jacket was slightly loose across the shoulders. The trousers needed a belt pulled 1 notch tighter than usual, but it fit. And it was the suit I had worn the morning I signed Hayes Freight's first major carrier contract in January of 1991, and that mattered more than the fit. I dressed slowly, carefully, the way you dress when your ribs are still not entirely forgiving, and every motion requires a moment of consideration. The nurse who brought my discharge paperwork knocked twice before entering, saw me standing beside the bed in the navy jacket, and stopped. "You have somewhere to be," she said. It was not a question. "I do," I said. She smiled and handed me the forms. I signed them with Helen Vance's approval, which I had obtained the previous evenings, and she wished me well and left. I stood alone in room 412 for a moment after she was gone. 3 months, 91 days. I had come in through the emergency entrance on a Friday morning in September, unable to breathe without pain. And I was leaving through the front lobby on a Wednesday morning in December in a suit that had seen better decades but still knew how to carry itself. I picked up the cardboard box from the chair beside the bed. It was not heavy. It had never been heavy, but everything that mattered was inside it. Ethan was waiting outside in his truck, a practical, unassuming vehicle, the kind of truck a man drives when he has spent his career caring about what things actually do rather than how they look. He got out when he saw me come through the lobby doors and walked around to hold the passenger side open without being asked. We did not speak much on the drive to Commerce. That was one of the things I had always valued about Ethan Cole. He understood that some mornings are not for talking. He drove, and I sat with the box on my lap and watched Los Angeles move past the window, the freeways and the overpasses and the industrial corridors that I had spent 35 years learning like the lines of my own hand. When we turned onto the street that ran past the Hayes Freight Yard, I saw the trucks lined up along the east fence, 230 vehicles' engines, quiet in the morning, waiting for their dispatches. The sight of them hit me somewhere behind the sternum in a way I had not expected. Those were my trucks, driven by my people, carrying freight that honest men and women had loaded and delivered and logged and signed for every single day while the machinery above them had been used for something I had spent 35 years trying to stand against. I was going to fix that, starting in the next 10 minutes. Ethan parked in the visitor space near the front entrance. My usual spot was occupied, which told me Audrey had arrived before us, which was exactly what Rebecca had anticipated. I got out, slowly straightened the jacket, and looked up at the Hayes Freight Solutions sign above the entrance. 35 years ago, I had watched them bolt that sign to the wall. I had stood in the parking lot with Margaret beside me and a thermos of coffee between us and watched the installation crew drill the last bolt into the concrete, and Margaret had taken my hand and said, "There it is, Walter, there it is." I picked up the box. "Ready," Ethan said. "No," I said. "Let's go." He held the door. I walked through it. The lobby was quiet. The receptionist looked up from her desk, and her eyes went wide and then carefully neutral in the way of someone who has been briefed not to react. I nodded to her. She nodded back. I took the elevator to the second floor. The conference room door was closed. Through the narrow window beside the frame, I could see Audrey at the head of the table. She was standing, one hand resting on the surface, speaking to the assembled board with the practiced confidence of a woman who has been preparing for this moment for a long time. The presentation slide behind her showed a restructuring plan, Hayes Freight Solutions' new management structure, effective immediately. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Audrey's hand stopped moving. The color left her face in a single sudden drop, like a shade being pulled down over a window. Her lips parted. The room went completely still. "Dad?" Her voice came out fractured, barely above a whisper. "You should be resting." I walked to the center of the table and set the box down. "I've been resting long enough," I said. I did not rush. That was the first decision I made. When I set the box down on the conference table, I was not going to rush. I had waited 91 days for this moment. The people sitting around that table could wait a few more minutes. I opened the box and began placing documents on the surface one at a time, the way you lay out the pieces of something you are building rather than something you are destroying. Each stack went down flat squarely, without drama. The room was completely still. 12 board members, 3 senior managers, Audrey at the head of the table, her hands now gripping the back of her chair, her knuckles white against the leather. The first document, I said, is the electronic logging device data from 23 Hayes freight vehicles covering routes run between September and December of this year. I set the stack down. Under Federal Law 49 CFR, Part 395, this data cannot be altered or deleted. It shows 23 trips that stopped at locations not listed in any Hayes freight client contract. A warehouse in Fontana, a cold storage facility in Queens, New York. I reached into the box. The second document is the corporate registration for Sierra Pacific Transport LLC, a Nevada shell company. The beneficial owner, traced through 2 layers of nominee directors and a Delaware holding company, is listed in this trust instrument. I set it beside the first stack. Sierra Pacific Transport owns the vehicle that struck my truck on the 10 freeway in September. Audrey's grip tightened on the chair. I did not look at her directly. Not yet. The third document is an email chain between Audrey Hayes and a senior associate of Langford Capital Group, detailing the arrangement by which Hayes Freight shipping lanes were redirected to carry undisclosed materials. I set it down. The fourth is a financial transfer record showing $80,000 moved from a Langford Capital Group subsidiary account to the personal account of Dr. Raymond Harmon of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The first payment was made 3 weeks before my accident. The second was made 4 days after I was admitted. I paused. Dr. Harmon signed the medical assessment supporting the conservatorship petition. He was paid to write it before I was ever injured. The room had the quality of held breath, the silence of people who are hearing something they cannot unhear and are still processing what it means. I reached into the box one final time. The last document is a record of $62,000, paid over 18 months to Officer Daniel Cross of the LAPD Commercial Transport Division. Officer Cross has been cooperating with federal investigators since last week. I set it down. Deputy Chief Everett Shaw, whose charitable organization served as an intermediate holding account for funds generated by this operation, was taken into federal custody this morning. I looked up. I looked at the board. I looked at the senior managers. And then I looked at Audrey. She was not looking at the documents. She was looking at me. Her eyes were wet, not streaming, not dramatic, just quietly and completely full, the way eyes get when a person has run out of the energy required to hold something back. One tear moved down her left cheek, and she did not reach up to wipe it away. "You didn't build this company," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected, quieter. "You only used it." The conference room door opened. Special Agent Rebecca Okafor walked in with 2 federal agents behind her. She was carrying a leather folder and wearing the expression of a person arriving exactly on schedule. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "I apologize for the interruption. Mr. Hayes, thank you for your patience." She looked at Audrey. "Ms. Hayes, I have a federal warrant for your arrest. Please step away from the chair." Audrey did not argue. She did not turn and run or raise her voice or do any of the things a person imagines they might do in a moment like that. She simply let go of the chair, took one step back, and stood there smaller somehow than she had seemed 10 minutes ago when she was standing at the head of the table with the future of the company in her hands. What happened at LAX, I did not see. I learned it afterward from Rebecca in the same measured second-hand way I had learned most things over the past 3 months. Victor Langford had arrived at Tom Bradley International Terminal at 9:45 that morning with 2 carry-on bags and a business-class ticket to Zurich. He had cleared security without incident. He had been sitting at the gate reading something on his phone when 2 federal agents and a U.S. Marshal approached from different directions simultaneously. He had looked up. He had seen their credentials. And then, for the first time in what I imagined was a very long time, Victor Langford had nothing left to say. They placed him in handcuffs at the boarding gate while the other passengers watched. His leather portfolio, the same style he had carried into my conference room 6 years ago, with a purchase offer and a patient smile, was placed in an evidence bag. He had waited 6 years for the right moment. He had simply waited a little too long. After Rebecca led Audrey out of the conference room, I stood at the window and looked down at the yard below. The trucks were still lined up along the east fence engines, quiet waiting. In an hour, they would begin their routes, the same routes they had run for 35 years, carrying honest freight for honest clients driven by people who deserved better than what had been done above their heads. My chest ached, my ribs ached, my throat tightened until I had to press my lips together and breathe carefully through my nose. The room behind me emptied slowly, board members filing out, managers collecting their things, the quiet aftermath of something large coming to an end. Ethan appeared beside me at the window. He did not say anything. He just stood there the way he had stood beside me on a highway shoulder in Nevada 30 years ago, when my transmission blew and we were both too young and too broke to know that it was going to be all right. It had been all right then. It was going to be all right now. "She asked about you?" I said quietly. "Before they took her out." I saw her look back. Ethan said nothing. He knew the way old friends know things, that I was not talking to him. I was talking to the yard below, to the trucks, to 35 years of something I had built with my hands and nearly lost to something I had built with my heart. The room felt very empty. I picked up the cardboard box from the table lighter, now its contents spread across the conference table, where 12 board members had seen every page, and held it under my arm. Then I turned away from the window and walked toward the door. Rebecca Okafor found me in the hallway outside the interview suite at 2:47 in the afternoon. I had been sitting on a plastic chair against the wall for the better part of an hour, jacket still on the cardboard box on the floor beside my feet, watching the fluorescent light above the doorway do nothing in particular. My ribs ached from the morning's exertion. My throat felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with the injury that had kept me in Cedars-Sinai for 3 months. Rebecca sat down in the chair beside mine without being asked. She placed her leather folder on her knees and looked at the same stretch of hallway I had been looking at. "She talked," Rebecca said, "before her attorney arrived, against our advice and against the advice of the public defender on duty." She paused. "I want you to understand what she told us was her choice. No one pressured her." "I know," I said. "That's Audrey." Rebecca looked at me then. "Do you want to hear it?" I pressed my lips together, looked at the floor, felt the particular weight of a question that only has one answer even when that answer costs something. "Yes," I said. Rebecca opened the folder. She did not read from it. She had the kind of memory that retains things accurately without needing the page. She simply looked at her notes once, and then looked at the hallway and talked. Victor Langford had first approached Audrey at the Southern California Logistics Association dinner in the spring of 2021. She had not known who he was, not the name, not the history with her father, not the failed acquisition offer from 2017. He had introduced himself as a private investor, interested in the freight industry. He was charming and knowledgeable, and genuinely interested in what she had to say. She said she thought he respected her, Rebecca said, that he treated her like someone who understood the business, not like the daughter. I pressed my palm flat against my thigh, said nothing. Over the following months, the relationship became personal. Audrey had not told me, because she had not told me about anyone. She was seeing a boundary she had maintained since her mother died, and I had become in ways neither of us had fully acknowledged both her parent and her closest friend. Victor had been patient. He had asked nothing of her professionally for nearly a year. Then in the spring of 2022, he had begun. Not with demands, with suggestions, small ones. At first a conversation about operational efficiency, a question about which shipping lanes generated the least margin. Audrey had answered because she trusted him, and because the questions had seemed genuinely curious rather than strategic. By the time she understood what the questions were building toward, she had already provided enough information to implicate herself. "She said she tried to stop," Rebecca said quietly. "Twice. The first time he reminded her of a conversation she had already had with his associates, conversations that, taken out of context, would look like she had been actively recruiting business partners for an unauthorized operation. A pause. The second time he told her that, if she withdrew, her father would be the one investigators looked at first. That the company records would point to Walter Hayes before they pointed to anyone else. My jaw tightened until I felt it in the hinges. She believed him, I said. She was exhausted and frightened, and she had been isolated from everyone who might have told her differently for the better part of a year. Rebecca's voice was careful and even. That does not excuse what she did, but it is the context. I knew the context. I had been building toward understanding it for 3 months, through every phone call with Ethan, and every conversation with Helen Vance, and every night I had spent in room 412 turning the question over in my mind. Had my daughter walked into this willingly? Or had she been maneuvered there by someone who was very good at maneuvering people? The answer I now understood was both, and neither. The truth lived in the complicated territory between those two things, in the space where a person's choices and another person's manipulation overlap until you cannot clearly separate them. That did not make it easier. If anything, it made it harder. "She asked about you," Rebecca said. I looked up. After she finished talking, before her attorney came in, Rebecca met my eyes directly. "She asked whether you were all right, she said whether you had come out of this okay." My throat closed. I looked at the fluorescent light above the doorway, pressed the back of my hand against my mouth for a moment, and held it there while the tightness passed. "What did you tell her?" I said. "I told her you were standing up," Rebecca said. That seemed like the most accurate thing I could say. I nodded, looked down at the cardboard box on the floor beside my feet. Lighter now emptied onto the conference table where 12 people had read every page. I thought about Audrey standing at the head of that table this morning, with the future of the company in her hands. I thought about her face when she had looked back at me as Rebecca led her out. Not the face of someone who had been caught, but the face of someone who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and had finally, in the worst possible way, put it down. I thought about Margaret, about the promise I had made at a kitchen table 22 years ago. I thought about whether this was what keeping that promise looked like, whether being Audrey's safe place had ever included the possibility that she would need me to be it from a distance through glass after everything had already broken. I did not have an answer. I was not sure there was one. "Thank you," I said to Rebecca, "for telling me." She nodded once, stood, picked up her folder. "Your investigator is downstairs. He said to tell you he has the truck running and the heater on." That was Ethan, 30 years, and he still remembered that I ran cold. I picked up the cardboard box and stood slowly, carefully, the way I had been standing up for 3 months, straightened the jacket. Looked one more time at the door of the interview suite behind which my daughter was sitting, with her attorney and the wreckage of a year's worth of choices. I did not go in. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Ethan was waiting in the truck with the engine running and the heater going exactly as promised. I got in. He handed me a cup of coffee from the place on Wilshire without saying anything. I wrapped both hands around it and looked out the passenger window as he pulled out of the parking structure onto the boulevard. Los Angeles moved past the storefronts and the pedestrians and the late afternoon light going gold and long across the pavement, the way it does in December when the days are short and everything seems to be lit from a low angle that makes even ordinary things look like they mean something. We drove for a long time without talking. That was all right. Some things do not need words between people who have known each other long enough. Ethan drove, and I held the coffee cup and watched the city and thought about a woman sitting in a room 2 miles behind us and a company 30 miles ahead, and 35 years of something I had built that was still standing. It had cost me things I could not get back. It had given me things I had not expected. I held the coffee and let the heater run and watched Los Angeles go past the window, and I did not look away. 6 months is not a long time. It is also not a short one. By June of 2024, Hayes Freight Solutions was still standing. The federal investigation had taken 4 months to work through its full scope. Charges filed, assets, frozen plea agreements, negotiated court dates set. My name had appeared in legal documents more times than I cared to count, always on the right side of the caption, but present nonetheless. Marcus Reed was still in his office on the 2nd floor. We had added an independent audit committee, 3 external accountants, who reviewed every transaction above $10,000. Marcus had suggested it himself before I had a chance to. He came in early and stayed late the same as always, and he never once mentioned what it had cost him personally to carry those records through the months when no one knew he was carrying them. Sophie Mercer had been promoted to Director of Compliance. She had redesigned the entire manifest documentation process from the ground up, new templates, new verifications protocols, a direct reporting line to me that bypassed every layer between us. She had also, in her first week in the new role, framed the original falsified manifest from September and hung it on the wall of her office. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Ethan Cole had joined the company's advisory board. He drove down from Sacramento on the first Tuesday of every month, and we had coffee before the meetings, the same way we had always had coffee in silence, mostly watching the yard, wake up the trucks, pulling out one by one into the morning. The Hayes Integrity Logistics Foundation opened its doors in April. Small Office 3 staff members, a website that explained in plain language what your rights were. If a company tried to take your freight contract or pressure you into signing something you did not understand. We had helped 11 businesses in the first 2 months. We expected to help more. On a Thursday morning in June, my assistant placed an envelope on my desk. The return address was a law office on Wilshire Boulevard I did not recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded once. 2 words, handwritten. I'm sorry. I recognized the handwriting before I recognized what I was feeling. The particular way Audrey formed her lowercase letters, the slight leftward lean she had developed in middle school, and never corrected the way the R in sorry curved upward at the end, like it was reaching for something. I sat at my desk for a while. The morning light was coming through the window, the way it comes through in June, bright and direct, no marine layer, the kind of Los Angeles morning that makes you understand why people come here and stay. I folded the letter carefully, opened the drawer of my desk. Inside, in the back left corner, where I had kept it for 39 years, was the photograph Audrey at 8 years old, sitting in the cab of the 1987 Peterbilt, grinning at the camera with both hands on the steering wheel and her feet not quite reaching the pedals. I placed the letter beside the photograph. Then I closed the drawer. Outside the window, the yard was full. 230 trucks engines starting one by one, the particular sound of a freight operation coming to life in the morning, diesel and air brakes, and the distant voice of a dispatcher running through the day's routes. Honest work, honest routes, honest people doing what they had always done. I had built it once. I had kept it. That was enough. I have driven a lot of roads in 67 years, but no road ever broke me the way this one did. This family story taught me something. I wish I had learned decades earlier. Love without awareness is just vulnerability waiting to be exploited. I gave my daughter everything: my trust, my company, my silence, and nearly lost all 3. Don't be like me. Don't assume that because someone carries your blood, they carry your values. Family betrayal doesn't announce itself. It arrives in signed documents and reasonable explanations in the voice of someone you would never think to question. I believe God placed the right people around me at exactly the right moment. Marcus with his patience, Sophie with her courage, Ethan with his loyalty. None of them had to do what they did. They chose to. That is not luck. That is grace. My honest opinion, a family story is never just about one family. It is about every person who has ever trusted someone completely and discovered that trust has a cost. And family betrayal heals slowly if it heals at all. If something in this story stayed with you, leave a comment and tell me what it was. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe because the next story is already waiting. Thank you for staying until the very last word. Some stories ahead contain fictional elements crafted for reflection and storytelling. If that's not your journey right now, step away freely and come back whenever you're ready.